Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the law of attraction, manifesting success stories show comes in. If you are ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello and welcome to this episode. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and I am back with Safiyya and Alisa. And today we're actually going to we're going to start with what's awesome first. And then they are going to turn the tables and ask me some questions about LOA and anything else they feel called to. So this week I'll start with Alisa. What's awesome?
All right. Well, now that I'm married, we are talking about plans for the future. We want to have a couple kids, and I'm not going to be working full time and taking care of babies in my late 30s. Just not going to do it. So we're looking at like a career transition for me. Moving to something that I can do part-time from home, and also moving myself into a position where I have the bandwidth to also potentially go back to school. So we're in the process of figuring out what that looks like. We're also in the process of purchasing a home.
Yay!
Which is, so that all of that goes into, where do we want to live and what does it look like? And just so much is happening.
Oh, that's amazing. And I just flashed on one it like very early on, an assignment. And then what happens after you get this? And it was like, I get my own home and I'm living this life. And so yay that is happening in the process right now.
Yeah. And so much faster than I thought. I thought I was going to be like a couple years down the road in this process before I got these things. Not a few months.
Yay. I love it. It can happen so fast. It's so awesome. Safiyya, what's awesome with you?
My husband has been so supportive of me, and he's really been pouring into me. So I decided, I wanted to pour into him. So I surprised him with a really nice hoodie that he's been wanting for a while. So it came yesterday.
That's awesome.
I was like taking off the mail box. I said, here. So he really liked it, and I was, it felt good to be able to just love up on him like that. So
yes, that is so awesome. I love it. Very cool. All right, who wants to go first?
Well, what I had in mind for Cassie is this is something I thought about, because when you have other episodes with people who ask you questions, they always ask such good questions. And you go, oh my gosh, all the good questions have been taken. But in one episode, and I don't remember who you were talking to, you talked the hero's journey was mentioned a little bit. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's a great idea. So I actually have a couple questions about what your hero's journey has looked like for you. In particular, 3 aspects of the hero's journey. Like the first, call to adventure, like what did your ordinary world look like? And what was that moment that kind of called you into this like law of attraction adventure and set you on your way? Another big part of the hero's journey is like meeting the mentor. So who was your big mentor? What was, something that made a big difference in your journey? And then what some of the tests and trials have been for you as you go along the way. I think for me, especially right now with everything moving so quickly, it's easy to feel overwhelming or feel like we said earlier in the other episode, that I'm not doing enough, or that it just sometimes feels challenging or yeah. So what were some of those moments for you where it felt really challenging, or maybe you felt like things weren't working out, but it ended up working out exactly the way it was supposed to?
Yeah. Okay. So. I love it. All right, cool. All right. So the call to adventure, the ordinary world. So the first time, and I've shared this and I just love it, but I would say this is one of those, if we were doing it sort of as a movie or a book, it'd be like, oh, when they were younger, so the first time I used the law of attraction, I was in 13, 14 in junior high to manifest $20. And I've shared that story. So I went home and there was a contest for a fundraiser, sell so many things, and you get in the drawing, and there was five $20 bills. And I was like, I'm going to win one. And selling, I don't know, it's like 2 items or something. That was easy. And before I went to bed, I closed my eyes and I visualized that. So I sort of had that experience. The ordinary world. There's so many places, I feel like, as you were asking this question, I'm thinking of the answers. I'm going, I think it happens in chapters in my life. And the one that popped out probably was leaving my job, leaving that ordinary world. And it's awesome that you're asking this. Yesterday was 7 years since I woke up and did not have to go into my job as we're recording this. So yeah, cool. It is so cool. And that ordinary world of going to a job, and a really good job. It's not that I had, all jobs are great, but it wasn't, sort of average. I was on a path. My boss had been prepping me to take over, her management position a couple years down the road, and the salary, was above 6 figures. And so that was sort of my ordinary world. But I was called to this adventure of, let me let go of the money for right now and go have freedom. And so for me, that was the call to adventure. And meeting the mentor. I love this question. For me, I think the mentor I met was myself. When I left my job, and I had been working this stuff for a while, and it was really like almost sitting down and having a coaching conversation with myself. Like, if I want this life where I actually have clients, not just have a business, I'm not just a coach, but I actually have clients, which I had not been super successful at in the past. I was like, you have to do something different. And so for me, I think I was my own mentor. It was sort of, okay, how can you coach yourself? All the other things have gotten you to this point. But how can you start to coach yourself to be somebody who has a different experience, and that experience you want, which is parlayed into the scripting things that we do and all the awesome things that we do today in the Enchanted Circle. The challenges. In the trials, for sure. I can remember when I first put together Manifest 10K, which was about, 6 years, was a little over, so 7 years, but I started writing it probably in January. And I went to a friend's house and I said, I'm putting together this course and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, what is money what is money manifesting? We believe in science in this house. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this is, whatever. And I remember going home and having to have that conversation with myself about what I believe and get firmer in my beliefs. So I would say that's one challenge, because it really was one of those things that hit me like, I didn't expect some of my best friends to not just be like, you're awesome no matter what you do, right? But like, what are you talking about? And that was in the middle of enrolling people. That was in the middle of writing it, that was there. So let's see what other tests and challenges I've gone through. That is definitely one that somebody must need to hear, because it keeps popping into my head, was even years later. He's a best-selling author and he's written a ton of books, and I ended up at his house with my PR person, and we started talking. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, I help people welcome money into my life. And he had some flippant answer about how I described what I did. And I was like, okay. And then a couple minutes later, he's like, so what do you do? And I talked about it. He's like, I don't believe in money mindset. And I was like, okay. He goes, you just do it. I've studied all of these. In that point, he was studying billionaires and writing a book about like billionaire principles and what they do. And he's like, they just have a formula, and he told me about this guy that buys land outside of towns that are growing. Like, he had some formula, and he would buy land and he'd hold it for 10 to 20 years. And then he would sell it to like Costco or Sam's Club, because he knew when the population grew, that would be. And he goes, it's just that, like, it's just formula like that. And I said, well, that might be true. I said, but what gets in the way of my clients is that they don't have the trust enough for that. they can't stay in it yet for 10 years because they haven't had that experience, or they've had other experiences where things get in the way. And so by the end of this conversation, he was like, maybe I'm going to put the Cassie Parks trust principle in my book. And so that's one of my favorites. And I think one of the ones that will maybe impact listeners. Like I said, somebody needs to hear that one today, because that was really a chance to be like, and those are two examples of people saying things. And one, I had to go home and kind of, I don't know if I cried. I felt the feelings, whatever they were. I might've cried. And the next one was like, I'm going to stand in my power, like, and know what I know, no matter what. Like, so you can, the test and the trial became different. It's the same premise, but it became different. So, and I will think about more of those too. Did that answer your question? Give you a good start?
Yeah, that was great. Those are definitely some stories I hadn't heard yet from
Awesome.
all the different episodes and conversations I've listened to.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that even Cassie Parks had tough days.
Even Cassie Parks definitely had tough days. Yes, thank you for asking. And definitely I will think if there's more that we can fit into this episode too. Because I love sharing that, because it is how we go through that, and sometimes I wish I had been doing my own interviews all along the journey, so those would be more, everybody would hear those along the journey. So thank you. Safiyya, how about you?
Yes, I do have a question for you.
Absolutely.
And it is, how, if in any way, does practicing manifestation and living with intentionality change as you start to grow? Like, is it you start with a certain practice or a certain building of awareness and honing in on certain things, but as you start to grow, does that process change in any way, or is it just an amplification of the same process? You just do it bigger and bigger and bigger as you go along, like as a more seasoned manifester. Like, what does it look like, your practice where you are versus where we are as we're learning to embrace this way of living?
Oh, I love this question. And I will tell you, I just wrote this morning, I wrote a story in the community, which you guys might not have seen yet, but about how last week, I didn't want a script. I had a 2-hour script scheduled and I was like, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, I had all these reasons why I could let myself off the hook, and I did it anyway. And so some of those things do stay the same, even as we grow. It's not every day I wake up and I want to do it. And part of that is because of growth. When we're coming up against growth, I think it's natural to have resistance. And often that feels like I don't want to. I can see by Safiyya's face. She has had that experience too. I think that things get, so in the beginning, you have to become super aware. And I told this story, I don't know, on the podcast, but if this is where I've told it, but there was a point in time where I would just all day long just focus on my thoughts. I would just start to catch them, and so what shifts and changes is how much you have to pay attention. But then it shifts from sort of the quantity of paying attention to, I'll just put it as a quality of paying attention, because then you're catching those little, like, oh, did I just say that? Do I still believe that? Like, no, like, because as you grow, you realize, oh, I don't need that either. Or as you grow and change and you learn to become more intentional and manifest, even the things that worked before, or the things that you might have said, like, oh, I'm somebody who attracts this because that felt really good. All of a sudden you get to a place and you're like, I don't need that anymore. This is what I attract. I attract this bigger thing, or I attract more ease. It kind of shifts. So I would say that it both grows and gets more finite in a way. So it gets bigger, but also deeper. And the type of awareness shifts from that. I have to pay attention to so many things to I'm really honing in on like the little tweaks I can make. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Cool. Other questions? Do you guys have other questions you want to talk about? Safiyya?
I have, you may have already kind of touched on this, like, in what ways do you continue to like challenge yourself with your trust muscle?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Because I would imagine, like you said, certain things become second nature. And so maybe you're not as down into a granular level like we are, but like you said, it's the quality of things. So what does that look like as far as how do you challenge your process, and like you just set bigger goals and you just trust that it's going to happen? Like, is that how you flex your trust muscle?
So at its core, I keep doing this same work and letting the bigger stuff come. Right. So I do the workshop, same as you guys. I do the assignments. Like my 2-hour script was because there was an assignment to do a 2-hour script and I had scheduled it on that day. And then the bigger trust comes in 2 ways. One, you just start to trust, I'm supposed to, I don't know, look this up today, or I'm supposed to go here even when it doesn't make sense, or I should call this person even though I have no reason, or let me click on this website, right? Which are simpler examples. I'm intending that a sort of a bigger example comes, but you trust without question. It's really about how fast you move is sort of becomes the trust. Like, am I going to think about this or I'm just going to act? Like, here's a trust, here's an intuition, let me do it. And I can give you a real life example that is happening as we speak. After I did that script I did not want to do, there was sort of a series of shifts that happened that day, which has grown and grown over the weekend. And I'm sure coincides with this energy of this 7-year anniversary. And then it'll be 7 years since I wrote Money, Money, Money pretty soon. In that I'm going to bring back, it's going to look a little bit different, but I'm bringing back my pay after you manifest for money manifesting. And so the trust muscle is now, in the beginning, it was like, oh yeah, this is fun. That was inspired. I'm going to do this. And when looking back on it, there was sort of nothing to lose. I mean, there's always nothing to lose. That's something that goes on in our head, right? But I'm like, oh, okay, this is happening. I know it's happening. I'm trusting that inspiration. And so it's just navigating it in a different way because I've shifted things, I've grown things. And so it's trusting in a bigger way that that's going to work out. It's trusting that that's the right, I have a very established, amazing business. It's trusting even for you guys, right? Because one of the things that I've thought is, okay, it's going to look a little different. It might feel a little different. And what I have to trust now is more than just for myself. I trust that all of my inspirations that have to do with the Enchanted Circle are all best for all of you as well, that there is growth in there for you, no matter what it is. Right. And so that's one of the ways I have to trust is it's just sort of trusting about bigger things, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's a good question. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. That was great.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Cool. Any other questions pop up as we were talking about that? Anyone wants to share or ask? Still trying to think. I'm still thinking of more challenges, Alisa, because I do love sharing. I do love sharing those, and they do come up. They continue to come up because even I catch my story and I have to choose again. It's almost like I have to choose, going back to the hero's journey, I have to choose to leave the ordinary world a lot. I could probably put it in about 20 stories, where there is leaving this ordinary world, because all of it, when, as you grow and you shift and you change, then your ordinary world is what your adventure world becomes your ordinary world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I only focus on the first half of the hero's journey, because in real life, we never actually arrive.
Right. It's true.
There's no parade at the end of it for us. We just keep going.
Right. you wake up the next day, I always think about that. Everybody kind of has that joke about like a rom-com or a movie. Like, yeah, it's all great and wrapped up for that section, but then there's the next part, right? There's moving into the relationship and all the things in the, the challenges that come with that and the growth opportunities. So very fun. Any other questions you all want to ask?
I just thought of one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Might be a bit personal.
It's okay. Probably. And if not, I am confident enough to say, yes, it is too personal.
In your own personal money manifesting journey, with where you're at right now, is there something that you have been intending to manifest that maybe you've been intending to manifest for a while now that still hasn't shown up? If so, do you mind sharing what that is, and how do you keep the faith that it is going to still show up in the right time?
Yeah, I love that question. So this might coincide. It will be really fun if this comes out on an episode of Manifest It Now, where I kind of share this is, because Jenny and I were talking the other day, like everything we wanted 5 years ago is here. And, I put a little caveat, I did put a thing on my inside of my armoire, like I make $500,000 for my bed in my balcony. And that isn't here yet, but the life that surrounds that is. And now I can see, like, the pieces are here. I can see how it's going to happen, not in a control way, but I have a property that I'm working on that's going to take a little while. But I can see the numbers and I know, okay, there's part of it. I have this other project. I can see it in a very, not a, I hope it'll work out way, but a very solid, oh yeah, that's totally coming kind of way. And so to best answer your question, so that's what it is, number one. Number two is I have so much faith and trust because of everything else I've manifested that I don't care in a way. I'm always looking for how I know that's happening. Like, I know that's happening. I have so much trust, even if maybe I couldn't see the path, but I can tally the path very easily in a very low number or a conservative way. But even if I couldn't do that, I think I would like, this is so awesome. I can get there a lot of ways. That's what it becomes is, I can get it over here. I can, use sort of this pile and be like, oh yeah, it's going to happen this way, or, oh yeah, it'll happen this way, or, oh, worst case, that's 10 years out. Right. And so you get to this point where you trust so much that the only thing you see is all the possible ways it could happen. You stop seeing that it can't happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Nice.
Hopefully I hadn't answered it that way before. So, but yeah, thank you for asking that question. I love it. I'm like you guys, when I ask you questions, you get to say it in a different way or articulate it. And so it's really fun for me because I'm like, oh yeah, that is how it works, even though I haven't necessarily thought about it. So thank you for that. Any other last question, Safiyya?
Are you able to pinpoint like a defining moment where you were like, okay, this way of living is what I'm doing, and it's only going to be this, and I'm not going to look back. There's no plan B for anything other than living this way, the law of attraction way. Like, can you think of a moment that was like that defining moment where you made the decision, like this is it, this is what I'm doing, and this is the new me, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it comes more to the answer of it. So I had been utilizing the law of attraction in different ways, and I can look back now and see how I was creating and stepping into my future self. I just didn't define it as that or totally know what I was doing. But it was a few months after I quit my job, and I was scripting, And I had my own inspirations about how to script, which was different than I'd ever seen anyone else teach it. And I'd been playing with scripting for a long time. Like verbally, I'd been playing with how does it work if you do this, or you try it to do this, or you do all these possibilities sort of thing. And I had been scripting about my relationship, but within scripting about that relationship involved a friend. And having a couple friend come into town, and it was all about having the money to go out and do all these things with our friends and just being connected. It was really about being connected. And within a month, a friend of mine who was a friend, I'd only met her one time at a wedding, but we hit it off, and she came back into town to do some things with my friend group. Her best friend ended up not being able to come, which is part of the manifestation, because I don't think we would build the connection if her friend hadn't all of a sudden had to work and had to cancel on like the day before. And so we hung out that weekend. There were like 4 parties, a pool party, there was a 50th birthday party, there's all these things. And it was so much the essence, even though the relationship wasn't there, that whole other part of that script, the friendship part, the deep friendship, the deep conversations, the connection, the having so much fun, was so much like my script that I was like, oh yeah, this is it. So I think it was more about, I had used the LOA and I knew it worked, but it was the path. It was like, this is it forever. This is it. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you two so much. This has been amazing and so much fun. And I know that our listeners have gotten so much out of it, and so have I. So thank you so much. Thank you all for listening, and make sure to come back and check out who we have next week. I love helping people manifest money, because when you're learning to use the law of attraction, money is such a great tool. It gives such instant feedback. There's so many opportunities to see how the energy is flowing through you and where you might be getting tripped up or not allowing it to come in. So if you've had trouble manifesting in the past, you might want to use money as a way to learn how to use the law of attraction. Now, I have helped thousands of people manifest millions of dollars using my system Manifest 10K. And now I would love to invite you to join me complimentary and pay based on your success. You heard me right. You can join, get access to my very successful program, the Enchanted Circle, and most of all, my coaching for when you get stuck. And then you can pay me 10% of what you manifest after you're successful. If this sounds good to you, go to payafteryoumanifest.com to apply. That's payafteryoumanifest.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Law of Attraction Manifesting Success Stories show. To learn how to attract more money into your life, go to your favorite book retailer and order Cassie's book, Manifest $10,000.